My sister got the keys to a brand new car for her birthday. Dad said, "You've earned this." I opened my gift, a box of cleaning supplies. Mom smirked. "Now you can start pulling your weight." My sister laughed. That night, I packed my bags and left. A few days later, my parents started texting desperately. "When are you coming back?" I, 22 stood in the living room watching my sister squeal as Dad handed her the keys. The car sat in the driveway, a sleek silver sedan with a red bow on top, like something out of a commercial. Dad beamed and told her she'd earned this, that her hard work and dedication deserved recognition. Mom had tears in her eyes. My sister hugged them both while I held a wrapped box that suddenly felt very light in my hands. We shared a birthday. Same day, 3 years apart. Growing up, we'd always had joint parties until she turned 16 and demanded her own celebration. My parents agreed immediately. After that, my birthdays became afterthoughts, casual mentions over dinner, if anyone remembered at all. But this year they'd made a big deal about celebrating together again. I'd actually felt hopeful. I waited until the excitement died down before opening my gift. The wrapping paper was leftover from Christmas, crinkled and reused. Inside was a plastic caddy filled with cleaning supplies. Sponges, spray bottles, rubber gloves, dish soap. The generic store brand kind. Mom told me now I could start pulling my weight around the house, that it was time I learned some responsibility. My sister laughed, that sharp cackling sound she made when she found something genuinely hilarious. I looked at Dad expecting him to say something, to acknowledge how insane this was. He just shrugged and said my sister had been working hard at her internship and maintaining her grades, implying I hadn't been doing the same. The fact that I worked 40 hours a week at a warehouse while taking night classes apparently didn't count. The fact that I paid them rent from my paychecks didn't matter. My sister's unpaid internship at Dad's friend's company, where she mostly posted on social media, was more valuable. I set the box down carefully and told them thank you. My voice came out flat, but nobody noticed. They were already back to admiring the car, discussing insurance and gas mileage. I went upstairs to my room, the smallest bedroom in the house, the one that used to be a storage closet before they converted it. My sister had the master bedroom on the second floor with her own bathroom. I shared the hall bathroom with everyone. I sat on my bed and stared at the wall. This wasn't new. The favoritism had always been there, obvious and unapologetic. She was the golden child, the one who could do no wrong. I was the backup, the one who existed to make her look better. Every achievement of mine was minimized. Every failure of hers was excused. When she wrecked her first car junior year, they bought her another one within a week. When I asked to borrow the family sedan for a job interview, Mom said I should take the bus because I needed to learn self-sufficiency. I told myself it would get better when I moved out. I'd been saving money, stashing away what I could after rent and expenses. But the cost of living kept rising and my parents had increased my rent twice in the past year. They said it was fair, that I was an adult now. My sister paid nothing. She didn't even have a job beyond her internship. They covered her car payment, her insurance, her phone, her credit cards. Everything. Something crystallized in my mind as I sat there. I was done. Not in an angry, emotional way. Just done. The switch flipped, and I felt nothing but clarity. I pulled out my phone and started making calculations. I had enough saved for first and last month's rent and a deposit. I'd been browsing apartments online for months, just daydreaming mostly. There was a studio across town, nothing fancy but clean and affordable. I opened the listing and filled out an application. Then I started packing. I didn't have much. Most of the furniture was theirs. My clothes fit in 2 duffel bags. My laptop, some books, personal items in a backpack. I worked methodically, quietly. Downstairs I could hear them celebrating, champagne glasses clinking. My sister's voice carried up the stairs, giddy and shrill. I left the cleaning supplies on the bed. Let them pull their own weight. The next morning I woke up early, before anyone else. I loaded my car, an ancient sedan I'd bought for $800 off Craigslist 2 years ago. It ran rough and the AC didn't work, but it was mine, paid for with my own money. I left my house key on the kitchen counter with a note that just said I'd moved out and would contact them later. No explanations, no emotions, no forwarding address. The apartment complex called me back within hours and approved my application. I signed the lease that afternoon. By evening I was unpacking in my new place. It was tiny, barely 400 square feet. The carpet was old and the walls needed paint. The kitchen was a galley style with outdated appliances. I'd never been happier. My phone started buzzing around dinner time. Mom calling, then Dad, then my sister. I let them all go to voicemail. Mom's message demanded to know where I was, said I couldn't just leave without warning. Dad's message was shorter, asking me to call him back to discuss this rationally. My sister's message called me dramatic and said I was being ridiculous over a joke. I deleted all three and ordered pizza. The text started the next day. Mom asked when I was coming back, said we needed to talk about this like adults. I didn't respond. Dad sent a message saying they'd given me space, but enough was enough. I blocked the message. My sister sent a paragraph about how I was being selfish and immature, how I'd ruined her birthday celebration by making it about me. I didn't bother reading past the first line. I went to work, came home, started organizing my space, bought some cheap furniture from a thrift store, a futon, a small table, a lamp. The studio started feeling like mine. I could breathe. 3 days after I left, Mom showed up at my work. I was on the loading dock helping unload a truck when my supervisor told me I had a visitor. She stood by the office in her designer workout clothes, arms crossed, face tight with anger. She demanded to know what I thought I was doing, living in some slum instead of at home. She'd driven around for 2 days looking for my car before finding it in the apartment complex parking lot. I told her I'd moved out. She said that was obvious, but I needed to come back immediately. I asked her why. The question seemed to confuse her. She said because I lived there, because I was part of the family. I reminded her I paid rent. If I was paying rent, I could pay it anywhere. She said it wasn't about money. I asked what it was about then. She didn't have an answer. She tried a different approach. Told me my sister was upset, that I'd embarrassed them by leaving like that. I pointed out that my sister had laughed at my birthday gift. Mom said I was being too sensitive, that it was just a joke. I asked her if she'd think it was funny if someone gave my sister cleaning supplies for her birthday instead of a car. Mom's face flushed. She told me I was being disrespectful. I told her my break was over and walked away. She didn't follow me. The messages continued. Sporadic at first, then increasingly desperate. Mom sent long texts about family obligations and how hurt they were. Dad sent shorter messages trying to guilt me about abandoning them. My sister's messages oscillated between anger and fake sweetness, trying to manipulate me into responding. I blocked them all after the first week. Work became my focus. I picked up extra shifts, started saving money faster without having to pay rent to my parents. Their rent had been eating up most of my paycheck. My new place cost less, and I didn't have to deal with their constant demands for more money. I started paying down my credit cards, built up my savings. For the first time in my adult life, I had financial breathing room. 2 weeks after I left, my uncle called. Dad's brother, someone I'd always gotten along with. He asked if I was okay, said my parents were worried. I told him I was fine, better than fine actually. He was quiet for a moment, then asked what happened. I gave him the brief version. The birthday gift, the years of favoritism, the decision to leave. He sighed, said he'd suspected something like this was going on. He'd noticed the way they treated me versus my sister at family gatherings, but hadn't wanted to interfere. He told me he was proud of me for standing up for myself. Said if I needed anything to call him. I thanked him, and we hung up. That call meant more than any message from my parents. 3 weeks in, Dad showed up at my apartment. I'd just gotten home from work, still in my warehouse uniform. He knocked, and I considered not answering, but figured it would happen eventually. I opened the door, and he stood there looking older than I remembered. Tired. He asked if he could come in. I said no. He asked if we could talk. I said we could talk in the doorway. He looked hurt, but started speaking anyway. Told me I'd made my point, that everyone understood I was upset, but it was time to come home and work this out. I asked him what there was to work out. He said we were family. I said family doesn't treat each other the way they'd treated me. He tried to argue that they'd always been fair, that I was remembering things wrong. I listed examples. The cars, the bedrooms, the birthday parties, the college funds. My sister got a full ride from them to a private university. I got told community college was fine and paid my own way. He claimed they'd helped me too, that I was being ungrateful. I asked him to name one thing they'd given me in the past 5 years that they hadn't given my sister first and better. He couldn't. I told him I wasn't coming back. He asked what they were supposed to do without me. That's when it clicked. I asked him what he meant by that. He stumbled over his words, tried to backtrack, but the truth came out. They needed my rent money. My sister's car payment was higher than they'd expected. Her credit card bills were piling up. They'd been relying on my income to subsidize her lifestyle. I started laughing. Couldn't help it. All these years they'd made me feel like a burden, like I was lucky they let me stay there. And the whole time they'd been using me as a cash machine to fund my sister's life. Dad got defensive, said it wasn't like that. That family helped each other. I told him help went both ways and closed the door in his face. He knocked for 5 more minutes. I put in headphones and ignored him. The messages got worse after that. Mom sent texts about how disappointed she was, how I was destroying the family. Dad sent articles about the importance of family bonds. My sister sent threats about never speaking to me again if I didn't apologize. I left them all on read. A month after I left, my uncle invited me to dinner. His house, just the two of us. I went and he made steaks, asked about work and my classes. Normal conversation. At the end of the meal, he told me my parents had been calling other family members trying to get them to pressure me into coming back. Most had refused. A few had some choice words from my parents about how they'd treated me over the years. Apparently, I wasn't the only one who'd noticed. He also told me my sister's internship had ended and she hadn't gotten a job offer. She was back home, unemployed, still spending money like she had income. My parents were panicking about bills. They'd apparently been living beyond their means for years, maintaining appearances. My rent had been the buffer that kept them afloat. I felt nothing hearing this. No satisfaction, no guilt, nothing. They'd made their choices. 2 months in, my sister showed up at my work. Not Mom this time. Just her. She'd clearly been crying, makeup smudged, designer purse clutched in both hands. She asked if we could talk, and I said I was on the clock. She said it would just take a minute. She apologized. Said she didn't realize how bad things were. That she'd been oblivious to how they treated me. I asked if she was apologizing because she felt bad or because they put her up to it. She admitted Mom and Dad had asked her to come, but insisted she meant it. She said she missed me. I asked her what she missed specifically. She couldn't answer that either. I told her we could talk if she wanted, but not about me coming home. She asked what I expected them to do. I said figure it out like adults, the same thing they'd always told me. She started crying again, said I was being cruel. I told her cruel was laughing at someone's birthday gift. Cruel was watching your brother get treated like garbage for years and saying nothing. She said she'd been young, that she didn't know better. She was 25. I walked away. She didn't follow. 3 months after I left, things stabilized into a new normal. I worked, went to class, came home to my tiny apartment, started dating someone I met at work, made friends with my neighbors, built a life that was mine. The messages from my parents slowed and eventually stopped. My sister tried a few more times then gave up. My uncle kept me updated without me asking. My parents had to downsize their lifestyle significantly. They sold my sister's car because they couldn't afford the payments. She had to get a retail job. They were fighting constantly about money. Dad blamed Mom for spoiling my sister. Mom blamed Dad for not making me stay. My sister blamed everyone. The family was imploding and I was at peace. Update 1. For months after I left, Mom sent one final text. No demands this time. Just said she was sorry. That she'd failed me as a mother. That she understood why I left and didn't blame me. That she hoped someday I could forgive her, but understood if I couldn't. I stared at that message for a long time. Part of me wanted to believe it. Part of me knew it was probably just another manipulation. I typed and deleted a dozen responses before settling on something simple. Told her I appreciated the apology, but needed more time. She didn't respond. Didn't push. That was new. 5 months in, Dad sent a similar message. Shorter, more formal, but the same sentiment. He acknowledged he'd been wrong, that he'd prioritized the wrong things. He said he was proud of me for building my own life, even if he'd made it harder than it should have been. I told him the same thing I told Mom. I needed time. My sister never apologized again after that day at my work. My uncle said she was struggling, bouncing between jobs, still living at home. My parents had her on a strict budget now. No more unlimited credit cards or cash handouts. She resented them for it. The golden child had tarnished. 6 months after I left, I got promoted at work. Shift supervisor with a significant raise. I moved into a bigger apartment, 1 bedroom with actual storage. Bought real furniture. Started investing in myself. Finished my associate's degree and enrolled in a bachelor's program. Everything I did for me. My uncle hosted Thanksgiving that year and invited me. I asked if my parents would be there. He said yes, but promised to run interference if needed. I went. Walked in expecting tension and found something else instead. My parents looked different. Humbled. They greeted me politely, didn't demand hugs or make a scene. My sister stayed on the other side of the room. Dinner was civil. Conversation stayed surface level. At the end of the night, Dad asked if he could talk to me privately. We stepped outside and he told me he'd been going to therapy, that Mom was too. They were working on things. He said he didn't expect forgiveness, but wanted me to know they were trying to do better. I told him that was good. He asked if there was any chance we could rebuild our relationship someday. I said maybe, but it would take time and would look different than before. He accepted that. Update 2. A year after I left, I had dinner with my parents. Just the three of us, my suggestion. We met at a neutral restaurant. They showed up early, nervous energy obvious. We ordered food and talked carefully, feeling out the boundaries. Mom cried when she apologized this time. Really apologized, taking accountability without excuses. Dad did the same. They said therapy had helped them see how badly they'd failed me, how their favoritism had damaged our family. They didn't ask me to come home. Didn't ask for anything except a chance to prove they'd changed. I told them I'd forgiven them, but forgiveness didn't mean forgetting. That we could have a relationship, but it would be on my terms. They agreed. We started having monthly dinners. Slow progress. Sometimes it was awkward. Sometimes old patterns would surface and I'd have to call them out. But they were trying. Actually trying. My sister was a different story. She reached out several times with half-hearted apologies that always came with justifications. I met with her once, and she spent the whole time complaining about how unfair her life had become, how hard she had it now. Never once asked about my life. I told her we could try again when she was ready to take real accountability. That was 8 months ago. Haven't heard from her since. Now, 18 months after I left, my life is unrecognizable from what it was. I'm graduating with my bachelor's next semester. Got accepted into a management training program at work with a clear path to operations management. Dating someone incredible who treats me with the respect I deserved all along. Have my own apartment, my own life, my own peace. My relationship with my parents is still a work in progress. We're not close, but we're cordial. They're learning to treat me as an equal, not a servant or an afterthought. It's not the family relationship I wished I'd had growing up, but it's honest. That's worth something. Sometimes people ask if I regret leaving the way I did, if I wish I tried to work things out first. The answer is no. Leaving was the best decision I ever made. It forced everyone to confront the truth. It gave me the space to become who I was meant to be. That box of cleaning supplies was meant to humiliate me, to put me in my place. Instead, it cleaned out all the toxicity I'd been living with. My sister got a car for her birthday. I got my freedom. Best gift I ever received.